The Camellia's Bloom podcast launched last June and it has already been a year, mashallah. Last year, I decided to start this community, and with that came a podcast where I shared our stories of how Allah placed in our hearts the seed of Islam, and it grew into our stories of how we converted and became Muslim. This year, I wanted to focus more on, now that the seed has been planted and we begin to grow as Muslims on our journey, how has our blossoming into the deen been like so far? That brings us to this year's theme, identity. We will be discovering everything around the topic of identity, from how has our identity changed since we converted to how we coexist with our ethnic identity as a Muslim. I will sit down with a panel of sisters and we will explore identity and surrounding topics such as marriage, racism, culture, and we will even touch upon how identity can shape and affect the way we practice Islam. It's going to be a very interesting and intricate season to see how we all unfold on this journey to Allah and who we really are after blossoming into the deen. Grab your cup of halal goodness and join us for this season 2 on the Camellia's Bloom podcast with your host, Khadija. All right. Assalamualaikum and welcome to this week's discussion. We are continuing the marriage and identity topic. We didn't get a chance to hear what Amanda has to say. So let's get started with Amanda. So let me just actually read the question again. So red flags to watch out for from the Muslim, I was going to say Muslim whale.
Oh dear.
From the Muslim male, which may affect a new Muslima's or convert's identity.
Okay, assalamualaikum. We're specifically talking about red flags that may affect the sister's identity. So this is like a specific subset of red flags in general. But for me, one of the biggest red flags is when a brother gets in touch with our organization and says, I want to marry a convert sister. To me, that alone is a red flag. And people would say, well, why? And my response to that is, why is he specifying a convert? What is it that he means? And a lot of times I will, when these brothers message us asking, I want to marry a convert sister, please introduce me to a nice convert sister. And I'll engage back and ask, well, what are you looking for? 9 times out of 10, maybe 9.5 times out of 10, the reply comes back with information that shows me that what he wants is a white girl. He will not consider a sister of African or Asian heritage. He wants a white girl. And that's because there is, as we've spoken about, white girl fetish. There is a mentality that a lot of people have, men and women have this idea that Western women, and by extension white women, who have converted to Islam, they sort of seem to think that we've all got this hedonistic, immoral past. So we are quote unquote experienced, if you get what I mean. They have this idea that we are simultaneously purer than the driven snow because we have converted to Islam and all our sins are wiped, but we know what we're doing. They have this idea that this is like this fantasy life of theirs, that they'll have this pure, pious wife who basically isn't a virgin. So it's like they get the best of both worlds kind of thing. That's a massive red flag. The second issue with it is this idea that somebody who is new to Islam doesn't know anything and is like an unshapen blob of clay for them to mold into their perfect wife. And that's an incredibly toxic mentality. You should never marry somebody because you think you can change them into what you want. You should marry somebody for who they are at that moment, not who they could potentially be in the future. So this idea that, I'm going to marry her and I'm going to teach her religion and I'm going to, teach her how to pray, and they dress it up in the clothing of, I'm going to get the hasanat for teaching this sister her deen. And they ignore the fact that so many convert sisters spent years researching before they decided to take the shahada and probably already know the religion pretty well and do not need a husband to teach her. They have their teachers. Most sisters are not looking for a husband to teach them their religion. They're looking for a husband to be a partner in life and to be the father of their children. We can go to a scholar to learn our religion. We can attend classes and things like that. This isn't why sisters look to get married. But this idea that this man is going to come in and teach her deen and turn her into this perfect, shining example of a Muslimah while benefiting from the fact that in her past life she had experience. This is just sick. I'm sorry, but it's just such a red flag. And I've seen it happen so many times. And it's gotten to the point where when a brother contacts us and says, I want a convert sister, I don't even reply anymore. Because if you're specifying somebody's religious background as a prerequisite for marriage, you've got an issue. And why a convert? Why not a born Muslim? Why not somebody who was born into a Muslim family and went astray and then came back to the deen? This is another thing that bothers me. If they were to marry a girl who maybe, let's say, for example, she was born into a Pakistani family, a Bangladeshi family, a Nigerian family, a Bosnian family, whatever. And she spent her teenage years off the rails because she didn't have good guidance in her life. And then she made tawbah and she came back to Islam. Would they consider a girl like that? No, because she has a past. But they'll consider a white convert who has a past. And it's like, oh yes, but she's pure now. It's like, well, so is the other girl. Tawbah is tawbah. I mean, literally taking the shahada is nothing more than making tawbah. That's all it is, subhanAllah. So there's a massive hypocrisy in how our community views converts as well, vis-a-vis how they view people who were born into Muslim families and maybe were a bit naughty in their youth and then came back to the deen. Yeah. So that's a red flag. The fact that there's a specific desire to marry a convert. And I have to say, there have been so many times when I was looking, when I had brothers say to me specifically that they wanted to marry me because I was a convert. So it was like I was ticking a box for them. And that just turned me off so much. It was just like, okay, you're blocked. But yeah, so that's my first red flag.
So
that's
cringe.
My first red flag. It is so cringe, and but the thing is, this mentality manifests in so many different ways. But for me, and the thing is, it's not always going to come out straight away. But the big sign is that if they say that they specifically want to marry a convert. My second red flag is when somebody is talking to you and they correct the labels that you use to describe yourself. And here I'm talking about the convert-revert debate, which, I'm not going to get into my feelings about those two words, but the number of times I've been talking to a brother and I've referred to myself as a convert and he'll say, you mean revert. And I'm just like, look, this is my journey, my identity. You don't get to label me. I'm not going to talk about which one I think is correct or incorrect or all of that stuff, but it's like, this is trivial. My label. Yeah. And they insist on it. Use whatever label you want as an individual, but that's your label.
Yeah.
And this is mine.
Me, exactly.
Yeah, that really, really bugs me. And I consider that a red flag because to me, that indicates that they will not accept your own view of yourself, that they are going to impose a view on you. And that's toxic. And then the third one, I don't want to go on too long, but the third red flag to watch out for is, and specifically again about identity, because there's so many other red flags, right? But the third one, and this is going to sound a bit funny, but any Muslim male who wants to talk to you and to not involve your guardian, your wakil. And I think Almas might have touched on this before about not involving your family. This is obviously something that, our families aren't Muslim. So there can be issues there in dealing with our non-Muslim family members, obviously. But even just like, every sister should have a guardian. They should have a wakil or a wali, whatever term you want to use. And if you don't, you need to get one. You need to find one. And if a brother who you're talking to is not willing to involve that guardian, just walk away, because that means that he's a manipulator. That means that he's going to try to isolate you from people. Simple as. You know, I know sisters who have met with brothers and said that, okay, well, here's my wakil's number. And they're like, oh, I don't want to talk to your wakil because then I can't talk to you freely about things. And it sort of makes you think, what the heck do you want to talk to me about that you can't talk to me about in front of my male guardian? And that's just sort of like, you know, as soon as they start trying to isolate you, that means that they are, to me, that's just a massive red flag. That means that they are manipulative and that they are controlling and that they will try to remove you from your support network in order to shape you into what they want. And that's just, no, that should never happen. And we as sisters should have enough boundaries in place to prevent that from happening. Those are the main ones, I think.
Those are really good ones.
I could go on, but I won't. I'll stop here because we've got other stuff to discuss. I could probably write a book just about red flags. But
Oh, we need that, actually.
yeah, I mean, just because we're talking specifically about identity, you know, I'm going to keep it to those three. But yeah, alhamdulillah.
Really good.
Allah protect all our sisters.
Ameen. Does anybody have anything else to add to the list? Anything that you remember that, you know, you weren't able to share last week? Otherwise, we're going to move forward. Let me know.
There's one thing I would add on this.
Sure.
This isn't a red flag per se, but it's something that I notice a lot of sisters don't talk to their prospective spouses about when they're sort of in talks kind of thing. We need to talk to our prospective spouses about what their expectations are within the family in terms of what language will be spoken and what language the kids are going to speak. Because I've met a lot of sisters who are married to people who have come from abroad. Yeah, whether they've come here as students or as refugees or as professionals or whatever, doesn't seem to make any difference. But they'll marry these people and the brothers will be like, they won't talk about this, they won't discuss this, but they'll have this unspoken expectation that the girl will learn their home country's language. And then 10 years down the line, when they've got a couple kids and the kids are only speaking English and the kids can't communicate with the grandparents back home, suddenly it causes a problem in the marriage. So these things need to be spoken about because, you know, obviously one thing that shapes your identity massively is your language. And if you are an English speaking British Muslima or Canadian or American or a French speaking French Muslim or whatever, you know, you are going to raise your kids in your mother tongue because you're their mother. If then your husband is expecting you to be speaking Arabic or Farsi or Pashtun or Gujarati or whatever, that needs to be made clear from the outset. Absolutely nothing wrong with agreeing to learn your husband's language and to raise your kids speaking that language plus the community language wherever you are. But that needs to be said from the outset because, believe me, learning another language is not easy. And also, not being able to communicate with your own grandparents is not easy. Mm-hmm. But a lot of men underestimate how kids learn languages and they're not willing to put in the work themselves to make sure that their kids speak their own language. They think it's just going to be on the mum. So really that needs to be discussed because that's not just about our own identity, but our children's identity as well. You know, we need to talk with our prospective spouses about how are our children going to identify? What identity are we going to impart on them? So if they're not willing to talk about that, or if they seem to think that magically somehow their child is going to grow up speaking fluent Urdu, but they're not going to be around because they're working, you know, really, they're working long hours and they're expecting you to teach it to them, they're going to be in for a shock. And then that can potentially cause massive problems.
Mm-hmm. That's actually a really good point.
I was just going to say, with the thing with what Amanda was just talking about with the language, I just think if whichever parent it is that has, say it's not English, but they're in an English-speaking country, then why don't they just speak to the child in that tongue instead of expecting someone else to learn it? Because I just think it's unreasonable, quite likely not going to happen for you to expect your wife to learn a whole new language to where she can converse freely like it's her own language with the children. How many years are you going to wait to have children? You've got to think about that if that's what you want. It just doesn't make sense. And I think if the man is that bothered, then he needs to make sure that he is speaking to his children in his language and they will learn it. I know so many couples that aren't Muslim I know a couple, for instance, one's Brazilian, the husband's Brazilian, the wife is Polish. They're in England. Their children speak all three languages.
MashaAllah, wow.
The wife doesn't speak, she's not native, she's not Portuguese. So the dad makes sure he speaks in Portuguese. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. If you want your children to speak a certain language and it's your language and you teach them that language, why would you expect your wife to learn a language? And then it doesn't make sense. Take responsibility for what you want, rather than just another thing that gets pushed on the woman. Because it's not her responsibility to learn a new language.
Right.
I totally agree with that. But the fact of the matter is that a lot of men don't realize how much they need to stick to speaking in their own language to their kids. And they get lazy. Yeah. And sometimes, especially if the mum doesn't speak the language at all, it's just easier because at mealtime, the whole family's sitting there and it's just easier to speak English or whatever the common language is. And then they get lazy about it. And also kids are sly, right? If kids know that dad understands what they're saying in English, they'll revert to English, even if dad's speaking to them in whatever language his own language is. Right. And then dad gets lazy too. Yeah. It takes a concerted effort and a plan to raise bilingual kids or trilingual or whatever, but they have to stick to it. And a lot of parents, they just sort of give up halfway through the process. And this is why I'm saying that this needs to be discussed. And if the man is expecting that his convert wife, who's still learning how to pray and still trying to figure out her identity, is also going to learn another language and is going to start speaking that language fluently, and then is going to have kids and raise them in that language, that's a red flag. Because that shows that he doesn't, number one, he's not willing to put in the effort, like Almas just said. And number two, all of the childcare is going to be on you. Mm-hmm. He ain't going to help. And that's a red flag as well. So I better stop now before I go off on a complete and utter rant.
Okay, so everybody has shared what they want to say. Let's move on then to, this is probably going to go on for a long time. The question, really interested actually to hear. What are some important I wish I had knowns about marriage you think would help those seeking to get married?
For me, this notion that, and this is just a societal, I get the feeling that most British people see Islam as foreign and Muslims as foreigners. And I think to a degree, when I converted, I did as well. You just sort of have this internalized, even though you believe it and you want to adopt it and you want to embrace it, but you do have this idea, there is sort of still this residue of it's a bit exotic in the back of your mind. And I wish that when I had converted, somebody had properly sat me down before I even thought to get married and instilled in me the idea that Islam is not foreign any more than Christianity is foreign. I mean, Christianity and Islam, they both originated in the Middle East, right? Mm-hmm. So, they are equally foreign in that respect. It's just one's been here longer, that's all. But I wish somebody had sat me down and said to me, Islam is universal, and becoming Muslim doesn't mean adopting a foreign culture. And you can be your authentic Canadian, British, Welsh self and still be an observant and, insha'Allah, believing Muslim. Mm-hmm. Because at the start, I didn't get that. At the start, I was very much that I had to shed all of my jahiliyyah, quote unquote, and embrace Islam purely. And that included culture, and it doesn't. So it's like, I think we've spoken about this before, this idea that I had to, when I got married and my ex-husband's family was from an Arabic background, that I had to adopt that culture as well to be a good Muslim. Or you get sisters who have, they've been within Asian communities and so they feel they have to adopt that. I wish that had been said to me more, and that I had that instilled in me from within more, because I think I probably would have made different decisions in terms of, who to marry and so on. Right. And I think marrying somebody who respects that in me, who respects that I have my cultural background and it's not un-Islamic.
Right.
I wish I had known that. And that's the big one, because that's sort of like all encompassing. I also wish I had realized, or I wish I had known just how much racism and Islamophobia can impact people and how much it can damage us, especially with kids. Because, if you're, and I'm saying this from a position of being obviously, a white person. As a white person growing up in Canada or in Britain, I had never experienced racism in my life. So the idea that my kids might grow up experiencing it never even crossed my mind. And I wish I had known that and had been a bit better prepared for that, because when it happened, I didn't know how to handle it. And I don't think that there was enough support for it, to be honest. I think I always just assumed that my kids would grow up like I did. And I wasn't prepared to receive it myself either. And that's not to be, all doom and gloom. And to be honest, I haven't received huge amounts of racism, even with wearing hijab and stuff. Alhamdulillah, Allah has protected me from that in many ways. But it would still be good to be prepared for it in order to be resilient towards it. Surely, Queenie, I'm sure there's things that you've learned between starting the process and now.
Yeah.
Like, alhamdulillah, you haven't had the experience of a crappy marriage. I would hope that all what we're talking about is going to like empower you, insha'Allah, to know what to look for, to know what the red flags are and things like that. So if you were to just like talk about things that you've learned since starting.
Yeah, I was going to say that Queenie could talk about the things that, okay, I'm glad I've heard this now.
Okay.
Bullets dodged so far.
I think the bullets dodged so far for me is that if someone is interested in you, and conversation has to go both ways. If there's not effort being put in from the other side, then it's just a waste of your time, to be honest. Like, I've been in conversations where I had to carry the whole conversation on my back. I'm the one that's constantly asking the questions, constantly trying to get to know the person. And I'm like, excuse me, aren't you looking for marriage too? Don't you have any questions for me? Like, why am I the only one that's constantly asking the questions? Like, what are your boundaries? What are you looking for in a wife? And alhamdulillah, like all the podcasts that we've done so far, I've learned what to avoid and what to look forward to in a future partner, alhamdulillah. But at the same time, it's just like, why am I putting so much effort into something or someone and they're not even putting an ounce of effort back into it? Like, I feel like I'm breaking the back, holding the whole conversation together.
Interesting.
I think they've kind of been covered. But to I put the same thing as Amanda to do with, I guess, racism and not always that, just the ignorance. I wish I knew of the ignorance within the Muslim community of other people that aren't from the same background as them. I kind of assume that because I'm in the UK, Muslims in the UK, if you've got a Muslim area, it's going to be in the same area as basically black people. So I assumed that we all live in the same place anyway, that there wouldn't be so much ignorance. I wish I had known that that wasn't the case, because it would have made, it just would have made things a lot easier. I guess with friend choices, marriage choices, just in general, I wish that I was aware that Muslims in general don't necessarily mix. Therefore, it will make marriage more difficult. I think just mirroring what Amanda said with the culture aspect, I wish I'd known that it's perfectly fine for you to not just keep your own culture, but kind of stand up for it, in that it is allowed as a Muslim to have your culture. Obviously, anything that's haram is not allowed, regardless if you're Muslim or not Muslim. But I think, like what Amanda was saying, it's kind of, and even to this day, I still see it. It's just kind of, whether it's spoken about or not spoken about, that the woman has to take on a culture that's not hers and leave it behind. And then also, just when you become Muslim, some people expect you just to leave your culture behind and basically become an Arab, or in the Muslim majority, which in the UK is mainly Pakistanis, and you just have to kind of take on that culture, and people just will assume that you know this and you know that. And I say to people, but I'm not from Pakistan, why would I know? I'm not an Arab, why would I know? That's got nothing to do with the religion, that's just got to do with the land that you come from. So I wish I'd known this bit more, and I think I would have I'd have struggled less with separating the culture from the religion.
So, okay, wrapping this topic up, what are some ideas or ways you guys think that the Muslim community could help converts or new Muslims with the whole, spouse hunting process that can still allow them to hold on to their identity? Like, they don't have to give up their culture or who they were before Islam. Obviously, giving up the bad things, the non-Islamic things, but still being able to maintain and hold that identity.
Sure you want me to do this one? Okay.
Please.
What can they do? What can the Muslim community as a whole do? Number one is do not offer to find somebody a spouse. Let me say that again. Do not offer to help somebody get married until they come to you asking about it. The number of sisters who take Shahada and immediately they're like, and we'll help you find a husband. People should not, I'm sorry, sisters, unless you're in a relationship with a Muslim person that you need to either make it halal or cut it off, right? You shouldn't be thinking about marriage within the first year, 2 years after taking Shahada. You're trying to figure out who you are. You've got to learn your religion. You've got to, figure out who you are. You're developing a new relationship with Allah that you didn't have before. You're trying to find your way in the world. You're looking at the world through a whole new set of lenses. Rushing into marriage early on is just never a good idea. I have never seen it work, to be honest. So, this pressure that the community puts on converts to marry quickly needs to stop. I do see it as the community wanting to shun their responsibility for supporting new converts. It's like they're like, oh gosh, somebody's got to take care of this person. Let's marry them off, and then it'll be that guy's responsibility, not ours. The community needs to stop this. Absolutely, 100%. Mind your business. Marriage is not an appropriate topic of conversation for somebody who has been Muslim for 5 minutes. That's my first one. Second one, when somebody does come to you and is saying that they want to get married, give them the same consideration you would give to your own daughter. Do not think of them as somehow less or somehow more than your own kids, right? Converts are, we get this whole thing about, converts are better than born Muslims because your slate has been wiped clean. Yeah, that clean slate lasts for about 20 minutes. And then dunya encroaches on us, and we see things that we shouldn't see, and we listen to things we shouldn't listen to, and we make mistakes. And, life happens, and life is full of mistakes. We're not expected to be perfect, and our slate wiped clean status doesn't last very long. Let's be blunt. So, subhanAllah, putting us on a pedestal and then when we're on that pedestal trying to find somebody who you deem is worthy for us to marry. No, it doesn't work that way. We're Muslims just like everybody else. We're humans just like everybody else, and we should be treated as such, and we should be viewed as such. So we are no more or less worthy of being married than anybody else. So I think that needs to stop. In terms of what we can do, I personally think that people who have been Muslim for a long time who converted need to have support networks in place for people who are newly converted, so that we can give these new people the benefits of our experiences. And the wider Muslim community needs to respect that and not see it as us forming some sort of a clique and, trying to be separate. We're not. We're just trying to help people. So it's like, like Almas was saying, mosques are basically clubs for people to enjoy their home country's culture.
Yeah.
We have the same, like you go to, like here where I live, we've got there's one community here that is basically, they're all from the same village back in Pakistan, and they have their own social organization. There's nothing wrong with that. Why not have that? You've got, Pakistani cricket teams or, Bangladeshi cricket teams, things like that. There's nothing wrong with that. So why is it when converts want to get together to support converts, it's viewed as something that shouldn't be happening? Oh, you're not mixing in. Well, neither are you.
Exactly.
And the fact of the matter is we are mixing in. Everybody is mixing in, but we also need the comfort of people who get us, who understand what we're going through, and who can appreciate and who can support us. That is absolutely necessary. So I think, if the community can support that work, that will help people, because it's all about empowering people, and nobody should be looking to get married when they're in a position of weakness. So if you're supporting work that empowers converts to be the best Muslims that they can be, then insha'Allah that will enable them to seek out, healthy, solid partnerships with spouses, good marriages. They'll know what to look for. So, supporting us in supporting new Muslims, I think, is really important. And then last point, how can I say this? I see too many sisters married to brothers. Well, this ties in with my point of, treat converts like you would treat your own. I see too many sisters being married to brothers who have severe issues. Things like drug addiction.
Oh, wow.
Things like severe mental health problems. Things like, criminality. Guys they've been raised in Muslim families, but they're, off breaking into people's houses all the times. And usually that's tied in with drug use. Yeah. Usually it's tied in with drug use, And the number of sisters I've seen who have been, and, had these boys suggested to them, their pasts have been hidden from the girl. The girls are pushed into marriage, told that they don't need a guardian because, there's this loophole in Hanafi fiqh that says that a girl doesn't have to have a wali to get married. The marriage is still valid. So they use that loophole to say, no, you don't need one. And besides, you weren't Muslim, so you've got a past. So it's not like you're, this good little Muslim girl who's been shielded all her life.
Wow.
And then I'm going off on a rant now, but anyway.
Well, go on. Go off.
But then they're marrying these boys to these young women, thinking that these girls are going to be their rehab. Yeah. And this is not just, unfortunately, it's not just converts. I've seen this happen with a lot of born Muslim sisters as well. But converts are particularly vulnerable to it because we don't have Muslim families to do the background checks. So if the Muslim community could stop viewing women, and especially convert women, as rehab for naughty boys, that would be great. Please and thank you. And I think...
Hold on.
Yeah.
Had to put that in there.
That's hilarious. So, but I think, how can we help people look? Again, it comes down to, don't think of us as being converts. Think of us as being Muslims. And then based on what you know about us, introduce us to people you think might be compatible. You know, we all bang on about how there's no racism in Islam, but when it comes down to it, loads of people get worried about, oh, I don't know if I'd want somebody from that background in my family. Get over that. You know, the community needs to get over that.
Yeah, seriously.
That's all. I'll stop now.
Don't give unsolicited advice unless it's asked for. Because first off, you need to mind your own business. And I don't know. Like, I feel strongly about this because people that give unsolicited advice, it's just, why are you butting into my business? First off, you should mind your own business and focus on yourself. And when I do ask for advice, it'll be welcome. Another thing, I guess, would be stop being so judgmental. Not everyone's perfect. We're all on our own journey of deen.
Nobody is perfect.
Yeah. We're all on our own journey of deen, and allow people to learn from their mistakes, even if it will take a while to.
In regards to finding a spouse, I think the first thing they need to do is actually have a conversation with the sister. I think, from what I gather, I think that if they're finding a wife or a brother, I think they ask a brother way more questions than they do a female. I think a woman, it's just kind of like, there's probably 5 questions, if that, some really basic questions. And I think they go more in depth with brothers. So ask the sister, you know, what she's looking for, what she needs, what she wants, what her preferences are. I think it's all been said. Look at us as Muslims, not as, I know, new Muslims, converts, reverts, I know, Irish, God, whatever. Just look at us as a Muslim and find us a Muslim. That's what I think they need to do, more than trying to find you someone that's from the same place as you. They need to look at deen first, not skin colour or food in common. They're minor things. It's just same as Amanda said. Don't treat finding a spouse or helping or suggesting or whatever a spouse for as any differently as you would do your own niece, nephew, sister, and auntie, or anyone that you know. Because I do feel that I don't think there's any thought put into, would they be a good match? Is this man a good brother? I think they just think, okay, he's single, she's single, you know, I don't know, they're both reverts, or he's been a naughty Muslim, they can go together. And they don't think about compatibility at all, or even if he's just a nice person. I just don't think it's something thought about. They can also not put pressure on us or try to make us feel like we're incomplete or we're doing something haram if we're not married. On the same point also about that is, I would like them to take the idea out of their head that we have to get married. We can't manage being alone, because they think we come from a culture where we're always in some type of relationship. Therefore, we can't manage being alone without falling into sin. I wish they would take that out of their head, because the amount of times I've heard in lots of masjids I've been to across the country, and they speak to a revert sister and she's single. Oh, you're single? Oh, you must find that hard. Why must you find it any harder than anybody else? But we all know what they're getting at. But the whole point is, well, is it everyone made the same way? We all have the same feeling and desires, so it's not any harder for us than it would be someone else. And I just don't know why they assume that we can't live without being in some type of relationship, which is one of the reasons why they kind of push sometimes, especially on the brothers, to get married straight away, because he can't just keep himself to himself. So I think they can do that to help us. And I think they need to get to know us more. I don't mean us as individuals, I mean as a whole. Because converts, reverts, we are a community, and they don't know anything about us as a community. They don't take time to learn anything
Very true.
I mean, they just know that we wasn't Muslim and now we were. That's about it. And most of us don't speak Arabic. They don't know anything. They don't understand family dynamics. They have all these assumptions.
Yep.
But they don't know anything. They don't take time to get to know us. And I think if they had an understanding of us in the first place, a lot of these things they do that we don't like wouldn't happen. It doesn't sound like Amanda saying about the whole, that basically we become rehab for these brothers. If they understood us, they know that we aren't going to put up with that, just like they wouldn't. I don't know where this assumption comes from, that we are more inclined to be happy with a brother that does something that he shouldn't do, or, is a certain way inclined. I don't know why they think that we're happy to put up with that, because they assume we come from a background where anything goes, and that's not the case. We brought up with morals, we have values before we became Muslim, and obviously we carry that into being Muslim as well. So I think they need to get to know us before. And one thing, which I know is not going to happen, but it's something I wish for. I wish they would consider their own relatives for us. But that's never going to happen. But it's just, we're allowed to wish. So that's something that I wish. Because it would make it easier for us. It would make it so much easier. If you've got a sister you've known for 2, 3, 4 years, and she's got a cousin, or, I know, a brother that's around you, compatible with you or something. And it would be nice if they thought about their own family rather than just trying to push you on someone else's.
Right.
It make things easier.
The last thing I wanted to say is what the community needs to do is, if you know that a brother has a flaw in his character, a major flaw in his character or in his deen, and you don't disclose that to a sister who is talking to him, that is an issue. It's not that. Looking into marriage is one of the few cases where disclosing somebody's bad traits is not backbiting. And in fact, we should be doing it. And this comes down to the whole thing about, girls are not rehab for naughty boys. And I think, it happens. It happens all the time. It happens all the time that, the community's solution for a boy being off the rails is to get him married. I don't know why they think this is a solution, but they do. And, they will get him married to, sometimes it'll be to a girl from back home because she won't know the issues. And if that's not available, it'll be to somebody from another city because she won't know the issues. And if that's not available, it'll be to a convert because not only does she not know the issues, but she doesn't have anybody to look into the boy's background for her. Nobody's going to tell her. Right? So this is the thing, I remember once seeing somebody who wanted to get married, and I knew that this boy had issues. And I ended up telling the sister that this boy has done this, that, and the other thing. And she was like, but I asked him and he said, no, he didn't have anything in his past. And I was like, well, of course, he's going to hide it, isn't he? Right. But the fact of the matter is he does have these issues and you need to look into that. And these were issues of violence in relationships. Right. So, but nobody was going to tell her that he had been divorced because he had battered his wife. Nobody was going to tell her that. And this is a massive, massive issue in our communities, that we do not divulge. People who, you get men or boys who have been previously married, have destroyed a marriage because of their bad behavior, and that gets swept under the carpet. And then you've got a sister who's been Muslim a few months, who doesn't have a wakil, and they're trying to get them married off, and nobody's telling her about his first marriage. That kind of lack of disclosure is, to me, that's a type of oppression. You're oppressing that sister by not telling her this, because you're allowing her to go unprotected into a marriage that is potentially dangerous.
That's an amana.
Exactly. And I mean, if you know something bad about a person and you know that somebody is about to get married to them, to me, I feel obliged to disclose. So this is something that the community needs to step up with. We need to protect sisters, and especially converts, from this kind of thinking. that we can sweep a boy's bad behavior under the carpet. We can, get her married to him. And then, if she figures it out, she figures it out. She's already married to him. What's she going to do?
Or think, some people think that, maybe she can change him. This too.
You see, that's up there. That's that kind of same toxic mentality of, I want to marry a convert so I can mold her. I want to marry him to a convert so she can change him. It's not going to happen. We are all responsible in front of Allah for ourselves, nobody else.
Right.
So if your young man cannot get the let out off his own back, he shouldn't be looking to get married.
Right.
Simple as. And you definitely should not be marrying him to someone who has only just converted, who is learning how to pray. Because let's be honest, one of the most common reasons I have seen for sisters not leaving Islam, but giving up on practicing is because they've had a rubbish marriage that they've barely been able to get out of alive. And the community has not supported them. And so they turn their backs on the community, and then they turn their backs on the religion. Marriage is, it's the one, how can I say this? When you're married, that relationship has to be a place that you feel safe and protected in. So if that actual marriage is a danger to you, that is so damaging spiritually. And, if we're not if we're not divulging people's bad past to potential spouses, then what we are doing is putting those sisters in danger of being pushed out of the religion by a bad marriage. And I don't want to stand in front of Allah and say that I didn't do everything I could to prevent that.
Right.
But people seem to be happy to. People seem to be fine with, but we don't want to expose his sins. Oh, well, it is not exposing somebody's sins in this particular case. I'm not talking about broadcasting on Facebook. Exactly. I'm not talking about broadcasting on Facebook that so-and-so, the son of so-and-so, did drugs when he was 18 and he's been in rehab now for 2 years and, nobody married their daughter to him. I'm not saying that. I'm saying if a sister is talking to this brother, warn her quietly, but warn her. That's all.
Yeah, it's a must, man.
That, offer, we need someone to act as a wali during marriage, and they need to step up and take that seriously, which they don't. I find it amazing because in the past when I've been speaking to someone for marriage, I've had to contact a masjid or somewhere. I ask if there's someone there to be a wali, and the brother always sounds really surprised. You don't have a wali? And I'm like, no, my family aren't Muslim. I don't have one. And they're still shocked you don't have a wali. And I think, well, how many people are you a wali to? I don't know. It's crazy.
I think they don't realize that they're gambling with people's lives.
It's like Vegas.
Yeah, basically. It's ridiculous. I mean, yeah, the stories we hear could go on and on and on, but I totally would agree with what Almas is saying. I would say, and I'm saying this to converts, your local mosque is not necessarily the place to go to find a spouse. Simple as. I mean, people I've had so many sisters ring me up and say, I'm so-and-so told me that I can go to the mosque and they'll help me find a spouse. And I'm just like, oh, dear Lord, no, please don't. Please don't, because that is the worst thing you can do. And that's really, it breaks my heart to say that. But some of the mosques in my area, that is the last place you want to go because it's a boys' club. And they will just, they know that a man is toxic. They know that a man is abusive, but they'll just try and find him a wife because, his last wife couldn't handle his temper. Oh, she kept provoking him and couldn't handle his temper, but maybe this girl will be more pliable. Oh, wow. It's so sickening to hear. And like Almas said, your relationship with your wakil, I admit it is a difficult one because obviously your wakil is not your mahram. So there's a limit to how much you can sit and talk to them and divulge to them and so on. But at the same time, they should make an effort to get to know you and what you're looking for. Maybe their wife can get to know you or whatever, but You know, it's not a tick box on a piece of paper. It's an amana that they're taking on. And it is frustrating because, you know, there's so many sisters who have come to me saying, I need a wali, I need a wakil. And I struggle to help them find one. And I've got quite a good network, mashallah. But because the brothers who I know who have good character to do that role don't want to take on the amana because they're afraid they won't be able to do it right.
Yeah.
And I respect that. It bugs me, but I respect that they're hesitant, right? The ones who are willing to do it just see it as a tick box exercise. And, oh, it's not that big of a deal. I just have to show up at the mosque and sign the paper for her. And then when I explain that, no, you need to help this sister find people, check them out. You know, you need to sort of supervise. Basically, she's like your daughter now. Then they don't want to do it because they can't be bothered. And, you know, I've actually had conversations where it's been suggested that, well, okay, we've got people who are acting as mentors for new Muslims. Let them do that work and then just have some guy sign the piece of paper. But at least you've got somebody in the community, even if they're a female, who's got that sister's back, who is looking into the brothers for her, who is doing the digging into their personal lives and so on. You know, and that's one way that it can be worked around, I guess. You know, finding out information. But I would definitely say to sisters, you know, don't assume that our so-called Muslim institutions are the places to go. Usually it's your personal networks that will work better for you.
Yeah.
I'm scared, Amanda.
Scared, Queenie. And make lots of dua. And more dua and istikhara and
whatever happens, good or bad, is meant to happen anyway. So we have to remember that. I know it's scary, and just you just have to walk over, because I've been through a bad experience, and what got me through it was the fact that I knew I did everything that I was supposed to do on my end. Because you can't control the other person. But I knew, okay, I did everything I was supposed to do. I did everything on my end the correct way, as best as I could. So therefore, when it kind of just blew up in flames, you do have a sense of peace, knowing that, okay, it was just meant to happen, and I didn't do anything questionable. So it's scary, but it's just take all the steps. This is to all sisters. Take all the steps that you need to take. That's the only thing you can control.
I would add, like we're talking about, what can the community do? I think that married couples who are, mashallah, happily married and have been for a number of years, maybe a little bit older, need to step up and offer to act as a sort of guardian for sisters who don't have family, most of whom will be converts. They need to do this. And they need to check their intentions as to why they're doing it as well. But they, you know, with good intentions, they need to do this in order to help sisters avoid some of the pitfalls that we've been talking about. I mean, I've got to be honest, in my opinion, like these apps and things like this, nobody should be using these. Like, I find all of these apps toxic. But when you're a convert and you don't have a huge network of people, or maybe you're in a town that doesn't have a whole lot of Muslims in it, and you don't have family anyway to have a wider network, what else are you going to use? Like, there is no other option, really. And this is the issue, because like people in our communities who know the communities and who are established, they're not stepping up to say, right, let's help people. And if they do, half the time it's for show. I've got to be honest. I know a few people who do it, and it just seems to be all for show. So, you know, I would say that to people in the community. You may think that you don't want this responsibility, but you know, when you've got a situation that some people in the community have to do and nobody is doing it, isn't the whole community to blame? You know, so, you know, we need to do better as a whole. And I'm talking about as a whole ummah, we need to do better, regardless of our background, to help sisters, to protect them from predators, to protect them from violent men who the mosques just turn a blind eye to, and so on and so forth. I don't think that the mosques are the ones that we need to approach to change. I'm going to be honest, because I think they're too set in their ways in some cases. But the people at the grassroots are the ones who we need to sort of mobilize in order to help people.
I just thought of another way the community can help each of us with getting married. Don't suggest to anybody that you don't know. Because we haven't said that. If you don't know the brother, do not suggest him for marriage to somebody.
Or,
that's what, yeah.
Yeah, that is a very good point. Or make it clear that you're not recommending the brother. You're just saying that this person is looking to get married. Like I've done that where somebody has asked me if I know of anybody looking to get married. And I do know people who are single. And I'll say, well, I know that person's looking. I don't know them. I am not vouching for them. I will be blunt about this. I am not vouching for them. I am not recommending them. You have to do your due diligence, but I know that person is looking.
Yeah, but it's important because people say that, that's what you're saying, but then they go, but I know he's a good brother. Okay, so make your mind up. Are you vouching for him?
Yeah, which one is it?
Which one? Yeah.
No, I know. I wouldn't vouch for myself, let alone somebody else,
Yeah,
Even,
so
I've got to be honest. Even my best friends who I have traveled with and stayed with and all of that, if somebody asked me, would you recommend them for marriage? I'd be like, that's not my position. I can't do that. I've never been married to them. Right? They're women. I've never been married to them. I don't know what they're like as a wife. That's for you to figure out. So, but also I would say for sisters who are looking, for brothers who are looking, just in case any brothers are listening, don't be put off. Assalamualaikum. Oh, that sounded weird. Assalamualaikum. Assalamualaikum.
Walaikum salam, everyone.
All right, so that's a wrap for season 2. So originally I had wanted to continue on with the topic of identity, but to be honest, at this time, I think it's best to just end off the season here. We are currently working on some changes, some new content for TCB, and as well, we're still working on the website, so please look out for that. I'm going to be going back to the drawing board for season 3 by Allah's permission. And in the meantime, I will be working on some short series for the podcast, and I'm hoping to focus more on working on my relationship with Allah and focusing on content that is more geared towards, working inward rather than outwards insha'Allah. So see you all on Instagram and make sure to stay tuned for our website launch, insha'Allah. Jazakallah khair to everybody who's always been supporting us and listening and joining our community. May Allah bless you all, and assalamualaikum wa rahmatulahi wa barakatu. See you soon, insha'Allah.